Hi guys, it's me, Chris. Welcome back to my parlour. And today I am sharing with you books I read in July. I only read 4 books in July. I attempted to read about 5 more, but I couldn't get past the first chapter, so they went back to their original place of being, the op shops. So altogether there was 9 books. 4 that I read, 5 that I tried to read, and 3 that I actually did read and had mixed reactions to. But overall, I did like them. So I'll go through those 3 at the moment. The 5 books that I didn't read, I'm not going to mention those because I couldn't read them, so I couldn't even give you a review on them. I didn't get past the first chapter because if you're not involved in the first chapter or even the first few pages, then for me, I can't plough through. Do you know what I mean? But some people do, but I couldn't. So the one book that I did read, I haven't got it now because it was a borrowed book, so it's back to where it belonged. Was Lisa Scottoline's book Daddy's Girl. Now, I don't know if you believe this, but it is possible because it happened to me. I liked and disliked that book in equal measure. I liked the premise of the book, and Lisa Scottline. I do read some of her books, like I was talking about, like Mary D'Annunzio, the lawyer. I really liked her writing style for her, but this book, oh, I don't know. It was interesting, but I didn't like it. But I liked it at the same time. Does that make sense? Because it happened. And I won't read it again. Some of the idea was really good. Some of the violence in it I didn't like. I wasn't totally surprised by the persons who did it, but I was surprised by the twist at the end. That did surprise me. And I sort of, I could cope with that, but some of it was just too boring. I skipped quite a few pages. So, yeah, so that was Daddy's Girl. And I could have swatted those brothers of hers. They were absolutely atrocious. Oh, in the 30s and acting like children. One of the family cat had died, and the brother said, "Oh, the pet cat is dead. Are you going to cry?" And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you're about 35. Is that how you behave with your sister? No, I don't think so. Anyway, so going on to the ones that I did read, and I sort of enjoyed. The first book, The Christie Curse. I liked it, but there was too much emphasis on the uncles, and everyone knows what their uncles do, don't they? So after it's mentioned about 5 times, because they're a bit shady, her uncles, after she mentions Victoria Abbott mentions the uncles about the 5th time, you think, okay, well, look, we know about the uncles. You don't have to keep repeating it. And the main woman in it, Jordan, she keeps saying that she's not like her uncle, she's not like her uncles. But in the end, which I was very disappointed in, she shows exactly who she is, and she's exactly like her uncles. So I was disappointed in the ending because she became like a blackmailer, and I didn't like that. But she's was hired to look for a supposed Agatha Christie play that she's written when she was disappeared for those 11 days, and she's been hired to find it by the Vera Van Alst is her employer, and she hires Jordan to find the manuscript. Someone else has already died looking for that manuscript. Will Jordan be the next? But I did like it. I liked some of it very, very much. It's not a keeper though, because I got sick and tired of hearing about the uncles. So I won't read it again. It's not a keeper, but I did enjoy it for the story itself. It was quite interesting. Then I read this book by Tess Gerritsen, Gravity. It's a science fiction, in my belief. It's a science fiction. There is some medical procedures in it, which were quite graphic, very, very graphic, because Tess Gerritsen is a medically licensed doctor. She has a degree in medicine, so she knows what she's talking about, but it was quite gory in some aspects. But I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. There were quite a few cliffhangers in this book, but they were all sort of finalised really, really well. Well, I thought they were finalised well. There's some little bit of, because it's I class it as science fiction rather than a mystery, because some of it's a bit unbelievable. It's based somewhat on fact, but it's been coloured a little bit and expanded on to make it more in tune with the story. But it was all about a space station, and one of the astronauts on the space station needs to come home because his wife has died, and so then Emma gets called up to take over his position on the space station and bring a few things with them, and then they're experimenting on the space station. One of the experiments goes haywire and starts a chain of events that is quite catastrophic, very catastrophic, and a lot of blood and gore, as I said. Blood and gore in full measure. And it was really quite good. They get stuck on the space station, and Emma gets stuck on there, and her husband goes to rescue her. As I said, there's a lot of cliffhangers. The ending was a cliffhanger. I'm disappointed in the ending. I'm glad the ending happened. Don't get me wrong, the ending was satisfying in the fact that it was resolved, but the cliffhanger wasn't resolved. Does that make sense? So suddenly there's a cliffhanger, and then there's an epilogue, and you think, well, what happened between how did this happen? How did this happen? Because all the other cliffhangers were resolved quite well, and the ending wasn't. So it was a cliffhanger, and then suddenly the end. And you think, what happened in between? How did this happen? So that's disappointing, because there wasn't any explanation about how it happened. So, but overall, I enjoy that, and this is a keeper. I'm going to keep this one, and I'll read it again, and maybe, hopefully, might even disappoint myself again by the ending, how abrupt it was. But it was quite okay, and I'm thinking I have several of her books, so I'm hoping her second or third book that I read is going to be okay. So, yeah. But it was quite good. She's, you'll find Tess Gerritsen. Have you ever seen the TV series Rizzoli and Isles? That show is based on Tess Gerritsen's books. So Rizzoli and Isles is from Tess Gerritsen. This one's not, of course. This is probably her first book, I think. They said this is her first book. I don't know. It was, I don't think so, because it was written in 2004. No, first published in the US in 1999. So maybe it would have been hers. Possibly, but that was good as a keeper, so I'm keeping that one. I'm not keeping the other one. Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. But I will go along with the reviewers on Goodreads. There was too much emphasis on the relationship between Victoria and Lord Melbourne, her Prime Minister. There was just too much there, and a bit funky. Because she was only 18 when she became Queen. So she was quite young. some of it was a bit childish. I mean, she was a teenager, so you know, she lived a sheltered life by her mum and her mum's advisor. So she was raised by them to be the next in line to the royal crown, should her uncle at that time, William IV, had died. I've got a bit of a relationship with William IV. Apparently he was the one of the kings that sort of fathered one of my great ancestors. So that was interesting. He didn't have any legitimate children, but he had lots of illegitimate children who could not take over the throne. So once he popped off, Victoria became queen at the age of 18. And it's finally, it was sort of after a controlled childhood, suddenly, wow, I'm queen, I can do anything. And virtually she did. She came into her own. She learned how to stand up for herself, to make rules and regulations. She got a lot of advice from Lord Melbourne, and that relationship was speculated in the time back then, in Victorian times. So, but I think Daisy Goodwin took too much of that and just ran with it, and it was a bit disappointing, especially when Albert turned up. And Victoria and Albert disliked each other so much, whereas as written in this book, that I'm thinking, well, however did you get married? Why ever did you marry? And so there wasn't enough building on that relationship to make it believable that Victoria and Albert actually were destined to marry each other and become so dependent on each other on a romantic love level. The what do you call it? The proposal was quite sweet, and I liked that. But there was Lord Melbourne was still in it, involved in it when Albert turned up. So I think Daisy Goodwin could have had lessened off on that and brought more of the emphasis back onto Albert and Victoria, gaining a courtship that would be believable and make the proposal more, oh, how wonderful. But it wasn't. It was sort of, huh? Why would you marry this guy? Why would you marry this woman? How did you get this love match that sort of people declare to be the most romantic love match in all history? I don't get that. Not from this book anyway. But otherwise, I really enjoyed it. And it's a keeper. I'm going to keep it and read it again. I might skip the Albert and Victoria courtship because I didn't find it satisfying. I found it quite irritating, actually. So, yeah. So that's it. That's what I read in July. I have a few more too. So I'm not a keeper. Keeper. So 2 books I'm going to add to my collection for my books. This is going to go to a friend of mine. She may enjoy it. She's 91, still loves to read at night time. So I might pass it on to her, and she can pass it on to... She has a book fellowship, something like that. She reads a book, passes it on, gets another one, passes it on, through a long line of friends. So I'll give that one to her, but these 2 are keepers. So thank you very much, and I'll be back in a little while with a op shop haul, and yeah, see what I'm going to be reading in August. I haven't started anything yet, but we'll see. Okay guys, bye, many blessings.